Sorry. Our final speaker for the evening is from Vacaville, California. That's some Vacaville residents. Interesting. One of her favorite travel memories is when her motorcycle broke down in Laos and she hitchhiked the rest of the way with some Russian businessman. Please welcome Ashley Sogge.
Right? She packs my snacks. Thank you so much for listening to our stories tonight. I'm going to try and wrap it up for everyone. I believe in second chances. I believe in the power of storytelling to preserve legacy. And so tonight, I tell Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale's story so his legacy can live on. It was about 10 years ago, and I was a newly promoted and very exuberant captain in the Army. I was serving overseas as an intelligence officer, and I was being encouraged to apply to special operations. And I didn't even really know what that meant, but I knew it was a challenge, and I knew it would be different. And I really hated my job. There are no windows, and there are no people to talk to. And so I said, yeah, this sounds great. I was being promised that this would be a place where I'd be a culture fit finally, and I would love it. And so I put in an application, and I got through the first round of many rounds. There are many hurdles, there are many gates, many wickets you have to tick, and so I made it through the first one. It takes about 2 years to kind of move through this process in the Army. It's a long path, there's a lot of risk in it. You don't know if you're gonna make it. You can make it to the very end and be told no. Thank you for coming out, but we don't need you. And so you take a lot of personal and professional risk to embark on this path, and I decided to do it. And so the second wicket I had to go through was to go to the Army Airborne School, which is where human beings jump out of perfectly good airplanes. It makes no fucking sense to me. I'm also, by the way, really scared of heights. Always have been. I don't like ladders. They kind of make me nervous. Second story buildings. I just don't like it. It's not for me. And so I knew this, obviously, putting in the application. This was not a surprise to me, but I knew that this was really something that I needed to do. This wasn't just a new job. This was a profession that I wanted to be a part of, and this was the first wicket I had to complete to just start the process. And a lot of people go through airborne school. This is not that hard of a school. You just gotta make it through. You gotta jump out of a plane 5 times. That's all you gotta do. And so to compensate for this extreme fear that I had, I decided to overtrain. I ran and did all of this physical stuff to make sure I was prepared. And of course, over the course of several months, I started developing small injuries. And so I show up injured to this school where you do run a lot. It's a terrible idea. It's actually why they run you, probably. Make sure you're not injured. And I knew I was gonna make it through. I was gonna push through. Plenty of people had done this before me, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I made it through the first 2 weeks. It was an excruciating pain all day long, every day. But it was gonna be over soon. I just had to jump out of a plane 5 times. And I jumped out the first time. It was a really great exit. You get this rush of air. I didn't hear shit because I was probably just like so focused. And your chute opens, there's this very like kind of blissful drop to the ground until you're like kind of close to the ground, and then you realize just how fast you are falling. And I landed perfectly, except I was so injured at that point, my body really couldn't take anymore, and I broke both of my legs. And so I laid there on the ground, and I guess I was in pain. That's not really the memory that comes back to me. The memory I remember feeling immediately was failure. I was laying on the hard ground under this extremely hot Georgia sun, which I was not used to as a Californian, and it was the first time I had failed at anything meaningful in life. And I just saw this whole future flashing past me. Like I couldn't even get through the first wicket to do this thing that I had to do with my life. I couldn't even jump out of an airplane. And I'm laying there, and one of the instructors gets on the blowhorn, and they only refer to you by the number that's painted in white on your helmet, and it's Alpha 26, get the fuck up. Like, it's not nap time. So I just had to lay there until they realized that I was gonna need some help. And so fast forward, I do all the kind of Army procedure things. I contact my career manager, I explain, hey, I'm still in this to win it. You just gotta give me a chance. I believe in second chances. Let me just come back. I'll come back in a few months. Let me get better, I'll train, I'll come back, I'll do this thing. And they're there's thousands of people trying to do this. They're yeah, whatever. You can show up to Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg, North Carolina is where the whole training unit is, where you go. And so I showed up. I drove myself in a manual Jeep with 2 broken legs. It was real exciting, from near Atlanta, Georgia. And I show up to the unit on crutches, of course. I do not look like an Army officer should look. And I report in, and I say, I'm here, I've got this situation. It takes them 2 seconds to say, you don't have a certificate from airborne school, you don't go forward. There's nothing we can do for you. Of course, everything's a negotiation to me. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. I just need a second chance. Here's the deal, I've already got this plan. And they're like, we don't care about your plan. There's 1,000 more people behind you that want to do this, so move out of the way. And so I crutched out, and on my way out, I grabbed a map of Fort Bragg, which is this massive base. It's a city in a city. And I know nobody there. There's no friend to phone. There's no one to ask for advice. And so I get out to my vehicle and I look at this map, and I'm looking for a unit. I'm thinking, what's my next option? There's another option here, and I find the biggest unit on the base, which at the time was 18th Airborne Corps, because I knew that a corps is bigger than a brigade, which is bigger than a battalion, so I should just go to the top. This is how little I knew Fort Bragg. It's kind of an intense place, because most of you have probably not been there. It's a very intense place. It's kind of like Wharton sometimes. And I find the headquarters for the biggest unit. I find their personnel division on the map. I drive there. I crutch my way in, and I find the people I got to talk to, and I plead my case. And I don't know why they helped me. It might have just been they felt pity for me. I looked pretty pitiful. I felt pretty pitiful. They might have just been excited about the chance to break some Army regulations, because that's what we were about to do. It was find a loophole somewhere in the regulations. See, the situation was I couldn't go back to my last unit. I didn't have a future unit to go to anymore, because they wouldn't take me. And I didn't really have a branch anymore. I needed to go back to military intelligence, and I refused to do that. And so they found a way, they found a loophole. They said, we can give you 6 months at a unit, borrowed time. You gotta get better, you gotta get back in shape, you gotta go back to airborne school. That's the only way to do this. And so they found a unit, the 525th Military Intelligence Brigade. And the deputy commander had just returned from Afghanistan. They were getting ready to receive the unit back the next month, and they said, you can go speak to Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale. And they called him. Just imagine, you're a senior leader and you get a call asking if some random junior person can come speak to you about breaking some Army regulations so that she can, they couldn't even explain the situation on the phone to him. And he said, yeah, sure, bring her by. And so I drive over to that unit. You just have to understand how irregular this is in the military. Some people like rules. And I showed up and I'm waiting outside of his office, and I just look like a bag of trash. I'm sweaty. This is July in North Carolina. I feel awful, I feel defeated, and I'm just I'm barely making it at this point, but this is my last chance. This is my last chance. And I'm waiting for him, and I see him walk into his office before I'm supposed to go in, and he's just the epitome of what an Army leader should be. Everything about him, the way he carries himself, the way his uniform fits. Every badge and tab on his uniform shows what he has done, what he has accomplished. And I'm just the exact opposite of this at this point. I don't even know how I'm going to ask this person to give me a second chance. I explain my story to him, and he agrees. he agrees to take me into the unit. And I spent 6 months there rehabilitating, which is an incredibly humbling experience because it involves a lot of like pool aerobics and stuff. You can't do impact activities, so like showing up every morning with old ladies at the pool and putting on fluorescent like floaties, you know, and like you gain a lot of weight when you can't like move around on your own, and I was drinking a lot of beer, and so it's just like not wanting to be in a swimsuit either. So this whole like process was really awful. But he had my back because this also just isn't normal for a random person to show up at a unit and work, but then be gone sometimes a quarter of the day doing what? Going to the gym. And he always had my back. He always explained to people. He basically defended me. And I got better. I started running again. I started working out. My legs healed. And I went back to airborne school in February. And I passed. And then 3 weeks later, the next weekend for special operations was assessment and selection. And I trained really, really hard, and I went and I passed. And Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale was the first person when I came back to the unit that I told. Because it was 100% him. If he hadn't given me that second chance, there is absolutely no way I could have continued. Two weeks before I was supposed to leave to start my qualification course, it was the end of June. It was right before the 4th of July holiday weekend. Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale was shot and killed. He doesn't even know what legacy he left with me. Because I went on to that qualification course, and every time it was hard, he was the first person I thought of. I had to make it through for him. It was no longer about my profession and my career, my desire, my ego to do cool shit. It was the fact that he had given me that second chance when everyone closed the door in my face. He took that risk as a leader. I think about those risks, what it takes to make them as a leader. I wouldn't be here today. I know that because I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do all of the things I had in the military. I wouldn't have had the strength and the courage to do the things that I did if that person hadn't stuck up for me. And so I tell his story tonight in honor of oral traditions, so that you now know his name, and you now know his story, and you can now think about where and when you can give a second chance to someone, or maybe where you need a second chance yourself, and you can be brave enough to ask for it. Thank you for listening to his story.